sound. There we go. Okay, we are going to look at Romans chapter 8. We got a little schedule faux pas. So we gotta be able to spend our Shabbat, the full Shabbat. So I got all this time, so you might as well look at some look at something. So on the fly, we decided to look at Romans chapter 8. We talked about a verse in 8 last night, but I figured we maybe put it all together today since it was kind of fresh. So if we could I don't know. We want to read the whole thing. It ain't that long. 39 verses. You read that?
Because I know the chapter. Did you hear the chapter we're going to be in?
Yeah, I hear it. Romans chapter 8.
All right, good.
You can read that.
Do you want to start reading or not?
I can.
Just read loud.
There is therefore now no condemnation, which are in Messiah, Yeshua, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For the law of the Spirit of life in Yeshua Messiah hath made me free from the law of sin and death. For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through in the flesh, God sending his own Son, in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walked not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after
Please
the
press
Spirit.
1 to mute or unmute yourself. 2 to lock or unlock the conference. 3 to record the conference. 4 or 6 to decrease or increase the conference volume. 7 or 9 to
Alright. That are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Because the carnal mind is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. So then they that are in the flesh cannot please God. But ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, is if so be that the Spirit of God dwell in you. Now, if any man have not the Spirit of Messiah, he is none of his. And if Yeshua be in you, and if Yeshua be in you, the body is dead because of sin, but the spirit is life because of righteousness. But if the spirit of him that raised up Yeshua from the dead dwell in you, be he that raised up Yeshua from the dead shall also quicken your mortal bodies by his spirit that dwelleth in you.
Okay, I'll take over. So then, brethren, we are under obligation, not to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. For if you are living according to the flesh, you must die. But if by the Spirit you are putting to death the deeds of the body, you will live. For all who are being led by the Spirit of Elohim, these are the sons of Elohim. For you have not received a spirit of slavery, leading to fear again, but you have received a spirit of adoption, as sons, by which we cry out, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of Elohim. And if children, heirs also, heirs of Elohim and fellow heirs with Messiah, if indeed we suffer with him, in order that we may also be glorified with him. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the anxious longing of the creation waits eagerly for the revealing of the sons of Elohim. For the creation was subjected to futility, not of its own will, but because of him who subjected it in hope, that the creation itself will be set free from its slavery to corruption into the freedom of the glory of the children of Elohim. For we know that the whole creation groans and suffers the pains of childbirth together until now. And not only this, but also we ourselves, having the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting eagerly for our adoption as sons, the redemption of our body. For in hope we have been saved. But hope that is seen is not hope. For why does one also hope for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, with perseverance we wait eagerly for it. And in the same way, the Spirit also helps our weakness. For we do not know how to pray as we should, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. And he who searches the heart knows what the mind of the Spirit is, because he intercedes for the saints according to the will of Elohim. And we know that Elohim causes all things to work together for good to those who love Elohim and to those who are called according to his purpose. For whom he foreknew, he also predestined to become conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn of many brethren, among many brethren. And whom he predestined, these he also called. And whom he called, these he also justified. And whom he justified, these he also glorified. What then shall we say to these things? If Elohim is for us, who is against us? He who did not spare his own Son, but delivered him up for us all, how will he not also with him freely give us all things? Who will bring a charge against Elohim's elect? Elohim is the one who justifies. Who is the one who condemns? Messiah Yeshua is he who died, yes, rather, who was raised, who is at the right hand of Elohim, who also intercedes for us. Who shall separate us from the love of Messiah? Shall tribulation, or distress, or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or peril, or sword? Just as it is written, for thy sake we are being put to death all day long. We were considered as sheep to be slaughtered. But in these things we overwhelmingly conquer through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing shall be able to separate us from the love of Elohim, which is in Messiah Yeshua our Lord.
Okay. All right, so we look at this chapter 8 of Romans. So this thing is kind of packed full of different thoughts and ideas, concepts, all in regards to the new covenant. A lot of things showing us what is what the new covenant entails in terms of this life of that we have in and through Yeshua, this regenerated life in Yeshua. Let me fix this. Go to load def real quick. Okay, so it starts off when we look at the first verse, where it says, therefore there is now no condemnation for those who are in Messiah Yeshua. Now, actually, when you look at this, there's some extra words there in the King James. The New American Standard, that's the end of the verse there. For those who are in Messiah Yeshua, it doesn't have the who walk not after the flesh, but after the spirit there. And I guess when the oldest,
I don't have that.
The oldest manuscripts don't have that last part. Who walk not after the flesh, but after the spirit. It was kind of something that was added in the later manuscripts. It's kind of give you, I guess it's one of those things where we have this literal translation, but this is one of those places where they kind of give you the thought.
Yeah.
They give you the thought for thought idea, where that
makes sense though.
Yeah, it makes sense in in what it's saying, but it wasn't literally there in the oldest manuscripts. So when looking at that verse, there is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Messiah Yeshua. When you look at that, you really have to. I feel like there's confusion involved in this verse, because especially when you deal with these people who have this kind of once saved, always saved kind of thought process, as to where once you have received salvation, then there's even in this, at the end of the chapter, there's nothing that can separate you right from his love, and then there's now no condemnation for those that are in Messiah Yeshua. But the thing that King James does for us in this first verse is kind of make this idea something that's present. It's not something that happened already, as if to say, you're void of condemnation forever. But it is what King James Version is doing with this, who walk not after the flesh, but after the spirit, is telling you what it means to be in Messiah Yeshua. So if you're actually walking not after the flesh, but after the spirit, that's what it looks like to actually be in Messiah Yeshua. So therefore, if you're walking not after the flesh, but after the spirit, there's now no condemnation for you Because you're walking according to the law, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh. You're walking according to the standard that Yahweh has put forth, which is his law in your heart. So this, when we look at this, now when we look at these verses here, the thing that helps us to understand and make these things really make sense is applying the new covenant to these verses. When I understand that the thing that Yeshua actually came to do was to put the law in my heart, you know, that's showing me what it actually means to be in Messiah Yeshua. When I have the law in my heart and it actually causes me to do the commandments, you know, that's the same point that's coming forth in this first verse. Where it's talking about there is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Messiah Yeshua, who walk not after the flesh but after the spirit. And we kind of are able to see this idea of the new covenant throughout this verse. Throughout this chapter here. Verse 2, for the law of the spirit of life in Messiah Yeshua hath made me free from the law of sin and death. For the law of the spirit of life in Messiah Yeshua hath made me free from the law of sin and death. So, again, verse 2 is kind of reiterating for us the new covenant. It's showing us now this new covenant that we are in through Yeshua, this law of the spirit of life in Messiah. And then when we understand what it means to be in Messiah, it's actually you walking in the spirit. You walking in the power of the Ruach HaKodesh that dwells on the inside of you, that causes you to walk out Ezekiel 36. That's what this law of the spirit of life in Messiah Yeshua is. And so you having the spirit of life in Messiah Yeshua has made you free from the law of sin and death. But what is that though? What is it? That's what I'm saying. What is it? What's the law of sin and death? If we say the law of sin and death, what's that talking about? Is that talking about just the commandments in general, or like what is it? You know? You was asking the question. You don't even know.
You can say that it's the law that if you sin, if you're a sinner, you die. There's a sacrifice that's necessary for your atonement. Sin doesn't just go unpunished.
Yeah, I think the chapter basically explains it, how if you're walking in sin. See, that's what I explain to people when they read this verse, and they think that everything, once they accept and believe in Messiah, they're okay, But you have to understand what it means when it says, which are in Messiah Yeshua. If you're in Messiah Yeshua, you're walking after him, you're doing, you're walking after his spirit, you're doing the things and keeping his commandments, not doing what you want to do. Because if you're doing what you want to do, then you're not in Messiah Yeshua. You have to understand what that means instead of thinking, oh yeah, I believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord and my Savior, but you're doing what you want to do. It's what it means when it says, to them which are in Messiah Yeshua, you're walking after his law and his commandments, and you're dying to the flesh, because if you're doing what you want to do, then you're not in Yeshua Messiah, and you are entitled to condemnation.
But I'm saying though in verse 2, when we talk about being in Messiah has made you free from something. It's made you free from the law of sin and death.
Well, does that mean
I'm trying to figure out what the law of sin and death is, that the spirit of life in Yeshua has set me free from.
Well, you're not walking after yourself. The law of the spirit of life is being in Yeshua Messiah. You're free from the condemnation of the law of sin and death. Unless you're walking after yourself, you're free from, because the law of sin and condemnation and death means that you can't keep the law. You really can't. You need the Spirit to keep the law. You can't keep the law yourself. And if you're trying to keep the law, then you're condemned to the law, which is you're sinning. You can't be free from sin trying to keep the law yourself. You can't do it. You need the Spirit of Yeshua Messiah. That's what I believe it means.
Well, I'm saying that yes, being in Messiah is having the Spirit of Yahweh inside of you, which causes you to do the things that he likes, which happens to be his laws and commandments. But we still need to know what it is that I'm being set free from. So you're saying that the condemnation of not being able to keep the law is the law of sin and death that I'm free from?
I'm saying you're free from trying to keep the law. You can't keep the law unless you have the Spirit. You're free from the condemnation of the law.
Well, you can't be free from trying to keep the law. You can't be free from trying to keep the law because the Spirit actually causes you to do the law.
But you can be free from the condemnation of it.
Well, that's not the same thing.
Okay. Okay.
So verse 2 kind of strengthens verse 1 in terms of that there is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Messiah. And then verse 2 saying that now that you're in Messiah, you are made free from the law of sin and death. So the law of sin and death seems to be speaking about the condemnation that comes against you as a result of your transgression of the law. Or like, say for instance, there's several laws that we can look at in the in all the commandments that are worthy of death.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, right? But there are a number of commands that when you do them, your death is your reward. And other commands, death is necessary, but not necessarily your death, because there's a sacrifice for sin. Right? So we have the fact that you need this sacrifice to be given, to be offered. And in other places, your actual life. So we with the commandments, there's always a need for a kind of a life for life kind of a thing. But when we, first of all, when we're in Yeshua, he's causing us to walk the straight path anyway. So he's causing us to actually do those things which are in bounds, right? Which are according to the law. So walking in Yeshua is actually causing us to actually do the commands. But also, when we go out of bounds, we still are able to trust in that same sacrifice that Yeshua has made for us. And that one sacrifice that he made is good for all. So I think that the problem comes in is that where we understand that the new covenant is really kind of like this, is kind of like a remix of the old covenant. We understand it's just not this whole totally new thing that's like no way connected to the other thing. We understand that it really is kind of this renewed way to satisfy what was required in the old. That's how we're able to look at this thing correctly. So when we think about what it is that we've been made free from, we can look at this again in two ways. We're free from the law of sin and death because in Yeshua, he's causing us to walk in righteousness anyway. So if I'm not doing anything wrong, then I don't have to worry about something that would be against me, which is the penalty for doing something wrong. But in the event that I do veer off the path, because of what Yeshua has done for me, I'm still able to be covered. You're still in right standing. Well, I can still be in right standing. What is the other thing? I'm just not. You're not automatically. It's just like automatic. Like it just there has to always be repentance. There has to always be turning. If I fall, I can't stay down. I have to get up. But I have the ability to get up. I'm able to get up. When you look back in the old covenant, if I can make certain falls, and there's no comeback there's no bounce back from it, right? But now
that would be a serious fall if you didn't have a comeback. You would have to kill somebody or something, like,
Yeah, but even like things like the Sabbath, really, breaking the Sabbath is worthy of death, right? You could get the death penalty for just like breaking the Shabbat.
I never thought about that.
Right? I mean,
because you can steal from somebody, and if you stole, you don't die. You just gotta pay it back. Stop arguing.
Yeah.
But if you break the Sabbath, you got spend.
Right. So what we're saying is that we have to really understand and trust in this thing of being in Messiah and understand that it's a present thing, and it's a continual thing. That we must actually walk in. Verse 3, for what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, Elohim sending his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh. So again, every verse we look at is giving us concepts that are dealing with the new covenant. For what the law could not do, the law, what is it that the law could not do?
It wasn't able to make us righteous.
Right. So that's where it was weak. It says it, and
we could do
in that it was weak
things
through the flesh.
Yeah, because we could do righteous things, but it doesn't like transform us to make us righteous.
Right. So when you look at this, it's kind of give you that same kind of idea of what we think about when we read in the book of Hebrews. It says that it's talking about a thing that the law is not able to do, and saying that it's weak. It was weak through the flesh. But when you think about it, it's kind of not the law that has a problem. It's the individual really who has the problem. Your inability to be able to be made upright it's not anything against the law per se, but it's just, it's just commands. It's just, again, we talked about this yesterday a little bit in terms of the law being this messenger. It has power. It does have power, delegated power, but at the end of the day, it's not that transformative power. It's just you doing things, but it don't change you on the inside. So when we talk about this thing that Yeshua has done for what the law could not do, it could not make you righteous. But now, because of what Yeshua has done, because of the fact that he goes away, that he went away back to the Father and sent back his Spirit to come and live and dwell on the inside of you. Now, because of what he has done, it talks about it even right here, Elohim sending his own son. This was the process in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, condemned sin in the flesh. The work that Yeshua did was against the problem that you had in your flesh. This thing that kind of has this life of its own that needs to be redeemed and regenerated. Your soul, right? So because of the strength of your soul and the repercussions of sin in you, because of that, it doesn't matter that you know of the laws, statutes, and commandments that Yahweh wants for you to do. It doesn't matter that you know what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
The only thing that's able to actually make you be able to actually be the way that Yahweh would have for you to be is for you to have that empowerment, for you actually to be regenerated, to actually be changed. And this is what we see happen with what the purpose in what Yeshua even came to do, what Yahweh set out for Yeshua to do in the sending of Yeshua in the first place, condemning that sin that is in your flesh. Verse 4 says that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us. So again, this
people will say that the righteousness isn't the actual law.
Yeah, they make a separation, but I don't know how they do that. I don't know how you do that. How you say that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us. Like, I'm trying to figure out what that even means if it doesn't mean you're walking out of the law. Like, what else possibly could it even mean? That the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us. Is it just kind of just, I think that in my mainstream Christianity, it's just kind of like this osmosis thing. Yeshua lived and he lived it perfectly. So therefore, because he lived it perfectly, there's nothing that you have to do. But this verse it don't seem to be saying that. It says the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. So the only way that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in you is if you're actually walking after the Spirit. And the Spirit, again, is causing you to keep the law, statutes, and commandments based on Ezekiel chapter 36. And this is just kind of, this is elementary stuff right here. Ezekiel 36 and 26 and 27. New heart will I give you, a new spirit will I put within you, and I will take away your stony heart out of your flesh, and will give you a heart of flesh, and I'll put my spirit within you, and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you shall keep my judgments and do them.
What's the chapter?
Ezekiel 36, 26, and 27. When the Spirit is poured out, that's what it will cause you to do. So when Yeshua comes, when he comes and he goes away and he sends back the Spirit, that Spirit that he sent wasn't sent so that you could speak in tongues. It wasn't sent so that you could do the Holy Ghost dance. It wasn't sent so that you could perform miracles, right? It wasn't sent for you to do all of those things. The reason why it was sent, the primary reason why the Spirit was sent, so that it would empower you to walk in the Spirit of Yahweh. And walking in the Spirit of Yahweh looks like you keeping the commandments. It says it right there, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us. How? Or what does it look like? Walking not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. I mean, I was getting ready to look and see what that even talking about in the Greek. I think that's probably that DKO word, righteousness.
Required. Well, mine actually in the New American it says requirement.
Hold on, verse 4, 8:4.
It's the Greek word 13:45.
Oh, so that the requirement of the law might be fulfilled in us. Look at that. Oh my goodness.
But it is that word that you just said. The kayama.
Yeah, which is like righteousness or to do righteousness. Or what is that?
It says here judgment, the justification, ordinance, righteousness, statute or decision, equitable deed.
So that the requirements of the law might be fulfilled in us who do not walk according to the flesh. Like, this is not some kind of, these things are all directly connected to each other. The reason why you don't have no condemnation, the reason why you're free from the law of sin and death is because you're walking in righteousness, because you're walking in the Spirit, because you're actually doing the things that Yahweh has for you to do, and you're in right standing with Yahweh, not because of your own strength, power, and ability, but because of the strength, power, and ability that he's given to you. You walking in the Spirit is faith. You walking in the Spirit is your obedience to him. If he gives you a key, if Yahweh's giving you the key to the house, and you got the key to the house, and it's left up to you to actually use the key, is that some kind of power and strength that you possess? He gave you the way in. He gave you the entrance way. He said, "Just here's the key. Here's the directions on how to get there. Make a left over here, right over here, turn up the street and go down over the hill and walk up the steps and put the key in the door and come in. Right? He's giving you everything that we need in order to do the things that he would have for us to do. It's still all him. He's empowering us, right? But again, we look at verse 4. The righteousness or the requirements of the law are fulfilled in us. Like, how do we look at this and say that it's not, you know, at the bare minimum? At the bare minimum, we're talking about the 10 Commandments, right? At the very least, we're talking about the 10 Commandments.
I was thinking about how even when you don't have that spirit, like how I just know people who don't believe in Yeshua, you don't believe in the spirit or whatever, they could do some of the commandments, but it's not like, I think commandment doing doesn't necessarily translate into being like Yahweh.
No. Because again, it's just you doing something. Just like I could put a badge on. I could put a badge on and a little belt gun, you know what I mean, and some handcuffs, but it don't make me a police officer. I don't have the delegated power, authority that is necessary to actually be that. Now I could walk around and look like it. I could walk around. I could even pull people over and make them think that I am it. And then I can have a fake book of tickets and I can write out tickets and junk, right? But it don't make me the police. It's the same thing. Yahweh is not worried about you doing things. He's worried about you being transformed. He's worried about your heart being changed, right? So when we do things, when we run into these people who are just about doing things,
or wearing clothes that look a certain way,
right, or wearing your uniform. Yeah, I mean, just because you go and get yourself a uniform don't mean you work at the place.
You can get a uniform from the thrift store sometimes.
Yeah. I could go down to the little uniform place and buy me some scrubs. It don't mean I work at the hospital. Right, so when we talk about doing things, it's just really that outward show. As a word, that outward show is not the point of the matter. That's not the thing that Yahweh wants to be done. He don't want for us to just do things, because anybody could just do things. I can do nice things for people. And really just really hate on the inside, but externally I'm doing these things, right? But if that thing is not motivated from out of love internally, it's just me sitting up here trying to get points, or showing this outward show of righteousness. It's not real righteousness. That's not uprightness. That's just acts. That's just acting, right? Okay. Oh, if Sister Sarah knows her camera's on, but
it's just blurry.
Huh? Okay, so verse 5. For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the spirit, the things of the spirit. Hold on, so let's look at this real quick. So when we talk about this here, let's see. Let me do this here. I look at this. I look at this. We talk about, this is verse 5, do mind do mind the things of the Spirit. To exercise the mind, that word is phroneo. To exercise the mind, that is to entertain or have a sentiment or opinion, by implication to mentally disposed, intensively to interest oneself in, set the affection on. Oh, that's big right there. Set the affection on. Savor, think, regard. Okay, so when we think about this idea of setting your mind on the things of the flesh, right? When we talk about savoring, we could say when you savor the things of the flesh, right? You savor. When you savor, it's something like you eating something and that thing is good, and you just like, you don't hardly want to swallow, right? You just be chewing on that mess, and then you just be chewing it up and just savoring it. Or you got like a big old cup of some Kool-Aid or something that's like extra sweet with ice cubes in it, and you ain't guzzling it. You just kind of just sipping on it, right? Because you savoring it, right? But that's what it's talking about in terms of when you're minding after the things of the flesh. You're savoring those things of the flesh. Like when we put so much priority on things that are not of Yahweh, the flesh, your carnal mind, your carnal desires, your carnal appetites. When we put those things on top, when we give those things the preeminence, right? That's minding the things of the flesh. For they that are after so that's saying that you're after the flesh. For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh. Right? So if you're after the flesh, hold on, let's look at that. What does that mean? We just looking at this, this is just kind of just, so if you after it, let's say if you after kata, down, after, among, by any means, beyond, after manner of, uttermost, opposition, intensively. So that's kind of like this preposition word, I guess. But again, there's that connectiveness to the thing, right? If you're after the flesh, that looks like something. If you're after the spirit, that looks like something. If I'm after the flesh, I'm savoring those things that are of the flesh. I'm making those things last. I'm prioritizing those things to be on top. But if I'm after the spirit, then I'm putting those spiritual things on top. I'm putting those things that Yahweh likes on top. I'm putting everything else aside and making sure that the things that Yahweh is about, I'm making sure those things are high on top of my priority list. If I'm after the spirit, right? That's what that verse 5 is telling me. And then verse 6 is just building off of that. For to be carnally minded is death. To be after the flesh, or to be fleshly minded, or to put to savor those things which are carnal, or savor those things which are according to the flesh, the end result of that is death. But to be spiritually minded, to actually be after the spirit or be spiritually minded, is life and peace. Life and peace. Right? So So not only do you not have death, you have life, but you have that peace, right? You have that shalom, right? You don't have to worry about situations and circumstances, right? We hear about this idea of having a peace that passes all understanding. When we sit up here and we face these different trials and tribulations, and we have all these worries and doubts and things that go on in our life. When we're spiritually minded, we have peace, right? So it's not only talking about life, but it's talking about a quality of life, right? It's not only just talking about the fact that you're alive, right? And that you have life, but it's speaking to the quality of that life, which is peace, right? Peace.
You know what, Kenny?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
That is so true. That really blessed me right there, because I was just telling Tirsa this morning. I was having a talk with her this morning, and I was telling her, I said, man, Tirsa, I don't have no peace. I don't have no peace, and you keep repeating that, and I feel like those are some of the decisions I've been making. I think that if the situation comes up, oh, I got to take care of this. This might be on the Sabbath, but I feel as if, there's consequences sometimes to our actions. And because of my unhealthy eating lately, it's caused me to have some medical conditions and I feel like when things pop up, it's like, even if it's on the Sabbath, I got to go take care of this, or I got to go take care of that. Because I'm thinking we have to make wise decisions to take care of our unwise decisions we made earlier. But that's so true. Your peace is taken away. That's not actually putting the things of Yahweh first. That's what I'm feeling right now anyway. That's not actually making a wise decision, taking care of some things that, especially on the Sabbath, and when you should be, that's where Yahweh would have me to be. So yeah, that was a blessing. That's all I just wanted to share.
Yeah. So we had to remember again, like, this is what life after the Spirit looks like. This is what it means to have no condemnation, right? Walking in the Spirit, doing the things for, always making that decision that is based on what the Spirit would have for you to do, right? And and again, all of these things are all connected to each other, right? And the reason why we're able to have life and peace is because of the fact that we're in right standing with the Father, because He said go right and we went right. He didn't say go right and then we was like, well, I'm gonna take two lefts first and then I'm gonna go right. But yeah, right. So you experiencing this lack of peace when you go outside of, when you become carnally minded, when you go over to that side. So you just giving testimony that this word is true, right? Verse 7, because the carnal mind is enmity, or is at war against Elohim. To be carnally minded is to wage war against Yahweh. You saying, I declare war whenever Yahweh say go right. You say, oh, I'm going to take two lefts first, then I'm going to make it right. You declare war against them. And you did that, right? It says, because the carnal mind is enmity against Yahweh. How strong is that word? I don't even know. Verse 7. Enmity. Hostility. By implication, a reason of opposition. Hatred. Woo! Hatred against Yahweh. hateful, odious, adversary, enemy, foe. This is the here, let me put this up here so y'all can see. Oh, so I guess it's
Sister Sarah.
Sister Sarah can see. This word enmity is in the Greek ekthra, which is hostility, a reason for opposition. Enmity is the feminine version. It's the feminine version of this word that means to hate, hateful, passively odious, and actively hostile, usually as a noun, an adversary, especially Satan, enemy, foe. So when we are carnally minded, to be carnally minded is death. To be carnally minded is enmity against Elohim. It was an act of Satan, right? When you think about time, the time when you got disciples and stuff talking, saying negative things to Yeshua, and he said stuff like, "Get behind me, Satan." Right? Yeah. It's because at that moment, he's being carnally minded, which is enmity against Elohim, was working against Elohim in opposition, but it's hatred towards him. It's hatred towards Yahweh to be in that carnal mind, to put greater emphasis on our carnal appetites above Yahweh. And we think about these things, and when we do these things, we get into our carnal mind. But there's great weight on these actions that we do, that we're seeing right here in terms of what it is, like these words that Paul is using, are some heavy words. Verse 8, so then they that are in the flesh cannot please Elohim. Those that are in the flesh cannot please Elohim. What do it say?
It's like the opposite. Like they don't please him.
You cannot please him, though. You cannot do it. What do it say about faith in Hebrews? Without faith, it's impossible to please him. Don't it say that? Don't it say that? Where does it say that?
Hebrews 11, verse 6.
Without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he that comes to Elohim must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of him that seek him. Don't say seek him. It say diligently seek him. He is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Without faith, it is impossible to please him. Over here, it says, we're just looking at verse 8, so that they are, those that are in the flesh cannot please him. Right? So it's the same kind of thing. So when you're in your flesh, you just not being a faither right there. You being in your flesh is the opposite of faith. And you're not able to please Elohim in that way. Verse 9, but you are not in the flesh, but in the spirit. So he's talking to people who are supposed to be regenerate persons and saying to them people, you're not in the flesh. So why you acting like you in the flesh? Or why you actually in the flesh whenever you ain't in the flesh?
When you're not supposed to be in.
You ain't in the flesh, so why are you in the flesh? That's what he's saying, right? You in the spirit. You supposed to be in the spirit. So what you doing? Right? That's what Paul's saying right there. In other words, you don't got no business being in the flesh. You don't got no business doing it. Because it says what it was, but you are not in the flesh, but in the spirit. If so be that the spirit of Elohim dwell in you. So if the spirit of Elohim dwell in you, you're not in the flesh, you're in the spirit. So what you doing? Right? I mean, when you look at what's going on right here, and you look at this, now if any man have not the spirit of Elohim, then he is none of his. Right? Verse 9 is a serious verse, right? But you are not in the flesh. That's not your reality. Your reality is that you're in the spirit. If so be that the spirit of Elohim dwell in you. Now, if any man have not the spirit of Messiah, he is none of his. So, you know, this is what we dealing with in terms of when we look at people who, I mean, there's a greater question at hand that needs to be asked, right? When your regular is carnality and your every so often is spirituality, you know, where are you at? Right? Are you of the flesh or are you of the spirit? Because it seems that what Paul is saying in here is that, you know, he didn't say should. I'm saying you should be. But he don't say should. He said you are not in the flesh. You're in the spirit. If so be that the spirit of Elohim dwell in you. So if the spirit of Elohim, because of the very thing that it's supposed to do is to cause you, like you had to worry about your own strength without the spirit. But with the spirit,
You shouldn't have that worry.
we supposed to be stronger than that, right? You had to worry about your own strength outside of Yeshua. But now with the strength of Yeshua, the Ruach HaKodesh, the whole purpose of the spirit in the first place, again, was to actually actively cause you to do the commandments. Right? So if you're
Amen. That's some good stuff right there. That's some good stuff.
Right. Yeah. So you know, we have to be able to look at ourselves. Paul is forcing us to look at ourselves and examine and know if, you know, this thing is, you know, where are we? Where are we at? Right? Because if the spirit of Elohim dwell in you, then it should look like something, right? Verse 10, and if Messiah be in you, the body is dead because of sin. So if the spirit, if Messiah be in you, again, we're talking about, you know, having Yeshua in you. If the spirit of Messiah be in you, then the body is dead, right? So the body, if the body is dead, then it can't be that thing that leads and guides us. If the body is dead, it can no longer be that thing that is pulling us down life's road, right? We got to pull that thing. We can't let it pull us, right? But the spirit is life because of righteousness. Verse 11, but if the spirit of him that raised up Yeshua from the dead dwell in you, he that raised up Messiah from the dead shall also quicken your mortal bodies by his spirit that dwells in you. So what's going on there with this quickening thing? What's happening? Let's see what it's saying there. quicken. Let's see here. If the spirit of him that raised up Messiah, up Yeshua from the dead dwell in you, he that raised up Messiah from the dead shall also quicken, vitalize, make alive, give life, quicken. To produce alive, begat, bear, living young. Yeah, to bear living young. To cause to live, to make alive, to give life. By spiritual power to arouse and invigorate. To restore to life, to give increase of life, thus of physical life. Of the spirit quickening as respects the spirit endued with new and greater powers of life. All of that. Metaphorically, as seeds quickened unto life, germinating, springing up, growing. Okay, so we got all that inside of this thing that it says here in verse 11. He that raised up Messiah from the dead shall also quicken your mortal bodies by his spirit that dwells in you. And again, that's this whole idea. That's this whole new covenant idea, what the spirit does. The spirit in you quickens you. It quickens, it brings life to your mortal body. Right? It brings a life. It gives power. It gives power unto righteousness, right? Verse 12. Therefore, brethren, we are debtors, not to the flesh. You don't owe the flesh. You don't owe the flesh to live after the flesh. Right, because that was your everyday, before Yeshua. Before you found Yeshua, you lived unto the flesh. The flesh didn't do nothing for you. The flesh don't do nothing for you but bring you down. Right, so you don't owe the flesh. Right, you have been made debtors. We have been made debtors not to the flesh to live after the flesh, right? But we're debtors unto Yeshua, right? He paid a price, right? Mm-hmm. Therefore, brethren, we are debtors, verse 13, for if we live after the flesh, again, you'll die. You live after the flesh, then you got condemnation, right? You live after the flesh, you die. You live after the flesh, you have death. But if you, through the Spirit, do mortify the deeds of the body, you shall live. So how do we look at verse 13 and say that there's nothing that I got to do? I don't got to do nothing. Verse 13 says, for if you live after the flesh, you will die.
Mine says you must die.
You must die. It's only right according to Yahweh's right judgment. If you live according to the flesh, then you don't have a choice. He don't have a choice but to die.
Wait, mine actually in the comments it says the literal is you are about to die. If you live according to the flesh, you are about to die.
But if you, through the Spirit, do mortify, what did I say? What did I say there? Mortify. If you through the flesh, if you, what verse is that? Yeah. 13. If you through the flesh do mortify, put to death, to make, to die, destroy, render extinct. Wow, render extinct. So you killing that thing, and you killing anything that looks like that thing. You making there be no chance for that thing to come back. By death to be liberated from the bond of anything, literally to be made dead in relation to something. To render extinct. If you render extinct the deeds of the body, you shall live. Well, what's the deeds of the body? What are the deeds of the body? Adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revelings, and such like. Those are the deeds of the flesh. In a nutshell, things that are outside of the commandments of Yahweh. Yep. They which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of Elohim. That's Galatians 5:19-21. Okay, so far when we look at these verses down through 13, is giving you a clear picture. We understand just because Paul never says to you that now I'm teaching you some water. Now that I'm teaching you this thing, this new covenant thing, right? He never says that. Right? We see new covenant said by name in Jeremiah. We see it said by name in Hebrews, which is just a restating of Jeremiah 31:31. And Yeshua, during the Last Supper, talks about the New Testament. In his blood, right, in his blood. Is the three places that is literally mentioned. But when we look at the thing that Paul teaches us over and over again, if we know what the new covenant is, we see that Paul doesn't do anything but teach the new covenant. The Spirit in you, the Spirit causing you to walk in righteousness. And here we done read 13 verses, and he hasn't done anything but speak about the new covenant. And verse 14 is a clincher. For as many as are led by the Spirit of Elohim, they are the sons of Elohim. So first he started off by saying, now if any man have not the Spirit, you're none of his. If you don't have the Spirit of Messiah, then you're none of his. But now he's going over and above having the Spirit of Messiah. He's going over and above just saying that you have the Ruach HaKodesh in you, and saying that as many as are led by the Spirit of Elohim, they are the sons of Elohim. If you're led by it, right? So you actually having a transformative experience is not the point. But you having a transformative experience, and then actually for that thing, that seed that's been planted in you, that spirit, that earnest of the Spirit that has been planted in you, and for that thing to actually grow and lead and guide you, that's the thing that makes you the son of Elohim. Or daughter. Right? So again, over and over again, we see the same kind of concept to let us know that, yes, Yeshua is our righteousness. And it's because of what he did that we are where we are. But the thing that he actually did for us, besides redeeming us, besides buying us back, right? Besides being that kinsman redeemer, was giving us the power to walk in righteousness. Verse 15, for you have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. So when we talk about this spirit of bondage, we didn't receive this spirit of bondage, right? We receive the spirit of life, because when we have this spirit of life, it causes us to walk in life, and we're at peace because we're empowered to walk in life, right? So we don't have fear, because there's nothing to fear, because we're in right standing with Yahweh. The only reason that we would have to fear would be if we weren't in right standing with Yahweh. But because of the power that the Most High has blessed us with, which is the Ruach HaKodesh, which we attain by faith in Yeshua, because of that, we don't have the spirit of bondage again to fear. We don't have fear, right? The spirit of Yahweh casts away all fear, right? Because we are able to walk and go boldly before the throne of grace, because we're in right standing with Yahweh, because of this power that he's given us and this ability to be able to be led by the Spirit, as it says in verse 14. The Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of Elohim. So it's not a guessing game, right? We're not wondering if we're his or if we're not his. If you're his, you know that you're his. Right? That's what I'm saying. The Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of Elohim. Right? So again, you don't have the spirit of fear. You're not wondering or trying to figure out if you're his or if you're not his. You understand that spirit of Yahweh is in you, that it leads and guides you, and it lets you know that he is your father. And that spirit inside of you lets you know that you are indeed his child. Verse 17, if you are children, then you're heirs, heirs of Elohim, joint heirs with Messiah. If so be that we suffer with him, that we may also be also glorified together. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. So when we look at this verse, it really seems to give you like this practical application of being spiritually minded. Because if you're spiritually minded, you're not worried about these things that are going on. You're not worried about these little sufferings that are going on in your present life. Because to worry about these sufferings that are going on in your present life is really being carnally minded, which is hating Yahweh, right? You're being an enemy. Yeah, you're looking at the flesh. You're looking at these sufferings. These things he's saying here, he's giving you practical application of what spiritually mindedness look like. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. There's no comparison. There's no reason for you to be looking at that and for that to be causing you to stumble. Because the thing that you're going through can't compare to your reward for walking through it. When we keep on going, looking at 19 and down, for the earnest expectation of the creature waits for the manifestation of the sons of Elohim. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who has subjected the same in hope. Because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of Elohim. For we know that the whole creation groans and travails in pain together until now. When we think about this idea of all of creation, when we think about this idea of all of creation waiting for the manifestation of the sons of Elohim, all of creation waiting for what happens when man is restored back to the place that Yahweh created for us to be in the first place.
We were supposed to be the stewards. So he told Adam to be the steward over the animals and plants and everything.
Right.
Then he cursed the ground.
Yeah. So when we think about this total restoration of everything, and nature understands this, right? That's what this is saying to us. Nature understands this. So even nature is not carnally minded. Even nature understands the way that things are supposed to be, right? But we have a problem, with our carnal minds and our ability or inability to be able to maintain our spiritual perspective. Verse 23, and not only they, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, which were ours, even we ourselves grown within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. Right? So when it talks about this first fruits of the Spirit, that Spirit that comes inside of us, that first fruits is, again, the Spirit that comes in us. Yeshua was the only one that had the Spirit. It talks about Yeshua having the Spirit without measure. I forget what verse it is. Look that up real quick. Yeshua had the Spirit without measure. Right? It's to say that we have the Spirit, I guess, with measure. Right? And whenever he returns, it talks about in, I think it's 1 John, where it talks about, and when however he is, when he returns, however he is, so shall we be. Right? Even here, when we look down,
that's John. Wait.
Oh, John
3:34.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yep. For whom Elohim, John 3:34 says, for he whom Elohim hath sent speaks the words of Elohim, for Elohim gives not the Spirit by measure unto him. So Yeshua came in the unadulterated presence of essence of Yahweh in the flesh, right? But we have a seed of the Spirit, an earnest of the Spirit the first fruits of the Spirit, that part that's growing at the beginning part of the season, right? That first fruits, that as time goes by, it grows until we are changed into the fullness and the image of Yeshua. So even inside of us, understanding that there's more to come, right, gives us this, as it says here, this expectation of growth, right? We should be anticipating growth in Messiah, right? Encouraging those things which kind of bring forth growth in the Spirit in Messiah. Waiting for, again, adoption and the redemption of our bodies, right? Our soul has been redeemed. Our soul has been changed and transformed. But we wait with earnest expectation. We wait for our total and complete redemption, which includes the redemption of our body. For we are saved by hope, but hope that is seen is not hope. For what a man sees, why does he hope for it? Right? Again, we're talking about this thing that we're looking forward to. We're looking forward to that transformation, a total transformation, right? We're in the process of transforming internally with signs of that internal transformation, with that external transformation, but we still need more, right? Because you still have that denial of the flesh that has to go on, right? You still, even though you're in the Spirit and not in the flesh, you still have the flesh that you must deny and put down, and walk in the Spirit, right? So it's dealing with this hope of the manifestation of the redemption of the body. But if we hope for that we see not, then do we have patience? Hold on. But if we hope for that we see not, then do we with patience wait for it? Mm-hmm. Likewise, the Spirit also helps our infirmities. For we know not what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit itself makes intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. Right? Because, I guess we're not, Yahweh knows. We know that Yahweh knows what really goes on with our situation when we don't know. But what we do know is when we go to the Father, when we go to Yahweh in the Spirit, right? The Spirit, right? As it says here, makes intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered, right? You have that spiritual connection with the Father that we may not know what we're supposed to be asking for, or so on and so forth, but Yahweh knows, right? The point is that we're actually going to Him with our wants and our desires and putting our trust and on Him and leaning on the Most High. And He that searches the hearts knows what is the mind of the Spirit, because He makes intercession for the saints according to the will of Elohim. Then as we go down, we go into what we started looking at last night a little bit, what we came back to anyway, in terms of verse 28, where it says, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love. Again, it's kind of getting back to the theme that it began with as far as being in Messiah. So if it says that all things work together for the good to them that love Elohim, those that love Elohim keep the commandments. If you love Yahweh, you'll keep his commandments, right? If you're keeping the commandments, it's an expression of your love towards Elohim. The spirit in you actually causes you to keep the commandments. The spirit in you causes you and shows you how to love Elohim. So we know that all things work together for good to them that love Elohim, to them who walk in the spirit, to them who don't walk according to the flesh, to them who are called according to his purpose, for whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate, to be conformed to the image of his son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. And again, we talk about being conformed to the image of the son. How is it that we are conformed to the image of the son?
Having the rock inside of us.
Right. By having the spirit in us and walking in it. We're conformed to his image by doing the things that he did, by manifesting the character that he walked in. Verse 30, whom he did predestinate, them also he them he also called, and whom he called, them he also justified, and whom he justified, them he also glorified. So he's talking about these chosen ones, the elect of Yahweh, his chosen, those that he calls according to his purpose, those that love him, those that walk in the spirit of Yahweh, those that keep his law, statutes, and commandments through the power of the spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, in your heart. Those that have had that spiritual heart transplant, those ones will be glorified. Those ones will be changed to be like Yeshua is whenever he comes. What shall we then say? What shall we then say to these things? If Elohim be for us, who can be against us? Exactly, right? If Elohim be for you, who can be against you? You saying these things, right? Because you don't have the spirit of fear. Why? Because you are in right standing with Yahweh, right? You've been made in right standing with Yahweh, right? By receiving the sacrifice that Yeshua has made, receiving that gift of the Ruach HaKodesh on the inside of you, which causes you to walk in his law, statutes, and commandments. Which is letting you know that everything that is going on with you at the end of the day, right, works together for the good. Right? These things all just come together. Everything just runs together. This whole theme here.
Is that supposed to comfort you whenever you want to get into your flesh?
Well, I guess it should, shouldn't it?
Whenever you want to stop. Whenever you want to.
Now, we can't sit up here and think, well, okay, again, so we know that all things work together for good for them that who love Elohim, to them who have been called according to his purpose. So we have to also connect this to walking in the spirit, though, right? So if we not walking in the spirit, and then bad stuff start happening to us, then we're supposed to think that those things is going to end up for good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those things may not end up for good. Maybe at the, you know what I mean? Maybe at you might make it through it, but we still have to deal with the fact that you reap what you sow. So if you sow wickedness, then you're going to reap wickedness. You might make it through it, and we can say that that's good because you made it through it. But I don't know how wickedness turns into good. I don't think that's what this is saying. I think it's saying the same thing that it was saying before. I can have life and peace because of the fact that I'm walking in the spirit of Yahweh. I won't have life and peace when I'm not in the spirit of Yahweh, right? So
you can't expect righteousness when you're not sowing righteousness.
Right. And I can't expect goodness when I'm not sowing goodness. So, and this is just my take on this. I'm looking at this where it talks about, for we know that all things work together for good to them that love Elohim. Again, it's just like you don't have no condemnation to them that are in Yeshua. It's a present thing. It's a present thing. Okay, 34. Who is he that condemns? It is Messiah that died, yea, rather, that is risen again, who is even at the right hand of Elohim, who also makes intercession for us. So who is he that condemns? I guess it's saying that Messiah condemns. That's what it's saying, right?
That's what it said.
Who is he that condemns? It is Messiah that died, yea, rather, he that is risen again, who is even at the right hand of Elohim, who also makes intercession for us.
Or is that to say nobody can condemn you because Messiah died?
Well, no one can condemn you if you're in Messiah. But if you ain't in Messiah, you're going to get condemned. There's no condemnation for those that are in Messiah. But the question is, who is he that condemns? Well,
I guess it just says that nobody can condemn you because Yeshua died.
I don't know that it's saying that. I don't know that it's saying that.
Because it says, who will bring a charge against Elohim's elect? Elohim is the one who justifies.
Hold on. What verse is that?
That's verse 33.
Oh, I didn't even read 33. Who shall lay anything to the charge of Elohim's elect? It is Elohim that justifies. Who is he that condemns? Oh, but again, I think it's still saying the same thing in terms of when you're in Messiah. If you're not in Messiah,
then you can't expect that.
I could lay a charge against you. If I see you sitting up here doing this, that, and the other thing, I can't say what thus says Yahweh. Of course I can. But if you're walking in the spirit, who can lay a charge against Elohim's elect? Nobody can lay a charge against Elohim's elect if they're walking in the spirit. I ain't guilty of nothing. Right? That's what that's saying. That ain't saying that I'm just, can't nobody say nothing to me because I'm the chosen. But I ain't walking in the spirit. This whole thing, anything that's good that comes from these verses here that we looked at in this whole chapter comes to those that walk according to the spirit and not the flesh. That's the only way you can have peace. That's the only way you're not under the spirit of bondage again to fear. That's the only way you don't have no condemnation. That's the only way that you call the son of Elohim. Right? He's just saying the same thing over and over again. So who shall lay charge? Who shall lay anything to charge of Elohim's elect? It is Elohim that justifies. Who is he that condemns? It is Messiah that died, yea, rather, that is risen again, who is even at the right hand of Elohim, who also makes intercession for us. Who shall separate us? Oh, go ahead.
Well, also I wanted to ask also that it's saying that there is nobody to condemn you, but I do believe you can condemn yourself. Elohim doesn't I don't think it's saying Elohim condemns you when it's saying he justifies, but if we're not walking according to his statutes, we condemn ourselves. That's true as well.
Hold on a second. Let me look at it.
33 and 34.
It says, who shall lay anything to charge of Elohim's elect? It's Elohim that is justified. Charge to call in. Okay, so this word here, you saying no one. But you saying no one. You saying no one, but I want to make it clear that this in no way is talking about those that are walking in the flesh. If you're walking in the flesh, then a charge can be brought up against you. If you're walking in the flesh, a charge can indeed be brought up against you.
But isn't that against yourself is what I'm saying. It's against yourself because you're not walking in.
Well, you may have brought it against you. You may have brought it against you.
So it's like we condemn ourselves because we're not doing, we're not walking after.
Wait a minute.
Is that the same thing as saying Elohim is condemning you?
Yeah, Elohim.
Because if you're walking in.
Wait a second. You brought it against you. Wait a second. You brought it up against yourself. Yahweh's. Yahweh.
Like earlier,
okay, wait a second.
It's the same thing we were talking about earlier when we were saying walking in the spirit. If you're not walking in the spirit, you're walking in the flesh, and you're not in His. Isn't that the same thing as saying if you're not doing it, I'm not the one sentencing you. You're sentencing yourself. It's like you're not. I'm just asking, is that the same thing as Elohim condemning you or His law? Like if you're under the law, you're trying to live up to the law, you can't do it.
What I'm saying, is that all of these things are true. But we can't sit up here and we can't only say that, well, I'm condemning myself, but can't nobody else condemn me. Or I brought a charge up against my own self. I brought up a charge against myself, but can't nobody else bring no charge against me.
I mean, that's like if you're walking in the spirit, you're not. I mean, Yahweh's not going to condemn you. It doesn't say Yahweh doesn't condemn you if you're walking in the spirit. So, you're actually condemning yourself on a life of sin, choosing a life of sin.
Wait a second. So
you're condemning yourself, but you'll also be condemned.
Wait a second. So I just want to be clear, and I want to understand what it is you're trying to say. Can somebody bring up a charge besides you against you? I want to ask you that.
Can somebody bring up a charge against me?
Yeah, because
I'm walking in.
Yeah, because you keep on saying that you condemn your own self.
No, I'm just saying I don't believe Yahweh condemns people.
Well, what you basing that on?
I believe that living.
What you basing that on? Hold on. What are you basing that on?
Well, Yahweh, He's not a punisher.
Of course he's a punisher. Why isn't he a punisher?
Because what I'm saying is I think we are the ones who choose that. All He's offering us is everlasting life. You know, He's a rewarder. He's a restorer. If we do not walk with that Yeshua in our lives, it's us who falls to damnation, condemnation, and damnation. Because we didn't accept Yeshua as our Lord and Savior. But if you choose not to, that's what I said. It's not against the people who's walking with Him, but the people who chose not to are already condemned.
It says that in John that those who don't believe in Yeshua are condemned already.
Yeah,
but
saying Yeshua doesn't pick who's gonna. He doesn't choose. Like you're my left, you're my left, you're my left, and I'm gonna cause you to walk with me. We choose to walk with him or not. So that's what I'm saying. They're already condemned. They're already the walking dead, is what I'm considering. They've been condemned because of their choice, not that Yahweh choosing who's going to be condemned and who's not going to be condemned. Our choices in life were already condemned, is what I'm saying. I don't think that he chooses. If he chose, who's going to be condemned.
I don't think that I was even never talking about the same thing that you're talking about right now.
What's that? I didn't hear you.
I think we got turned around a little bit. I'm not really sure what happened right there. But when I was looking at this verse here, 33, and it says, "Who shall lay anything to charge of Elohim's elect? Is Elohim that justifies? Who is he that condemns?" So then what I was saying was that these verses apply to those that are walking in the Spirit. And then I said, if you're not walking in his Spirit, then there is a charge to be laid against you.
Like if you're outside of his protection, outside of that ruach, then you're walking in the flesh. So you don't have the same rights.
so I'm saying that hold on 1 second. I'm saying if you're a person, because we looked at her and said that if Messiah be in you, the body is dead. Because
I understood that.
Okay, I'm saying that if Messiah be in you, the body is dead because of sin, but the spirit. Hold on, that's not the word I was looking for. Verse 9. If so be that the spirit of Elohim be in you. If any man have not the spirit of Messiah, he is none of his. And then it goes further on and says, for as many as are led by the spirit of Elohim, they are the sons of Elohim. So now we can deal with individuals who have the spirit, but they're not walking in the spirit, right? So there is a way that that person could be, right? So I'm saying that when it's talking about this idea of who shall lay anything to charge of Elohim's elect, I'm saying that's dealing with that person who's walking in the spirit. But then what I said is that if you not walking in the spirit, then somebody could lay a charge against you.
Yeah, I understood that part, but I guess what I was saying was...
I'm just saying it seemed like you didn't want for somebody to lay a charge against you because you condemned yourself by not walking in the spirit.
No, I understand that.
That's what I was asking.
The consequences I understand that the consequences is, you're charged at the end. But no, I was just saying that you're guilty. You're basically guilty of the crime because you committed it. So it was our choice, I guess, to. I was just making clear that there's no, like, he didn't force us to do the things that we did. Like it was our choice. That's all I was saying.
Right, but you still be condemned though. But you still will be condemned though. That's the thing though. You still And he's gonna condemn you. His word condemns you. He condemns you. His word condemns you. Those that carry his word condemn you. So you condemned yourself. His word condemns you. Those that carry his word condemns you. And he condemns you because you walked against his word. So all I'm saying is that all of these things that are good towards us that we see in Romans chapter 8 is dealing with those who actually are walking in the spirit, and they only apply to those that are walking in the spirit. So even when we get down to verse 35, where it says, who shall separate us from the love of Messiah? And it goes through all these things: tribulation, distress, persecution. Tribulation can separate you from the love of Messiah if you're not walking in the Spirit.
You know people who separated from it.
Famine and nakedness and peril and sword can indeed separate you from the love of Messiah if you're not walking in the Spirit.
People lose their faith all the time.
For they, as it is written, for thy sake we are killed all the day long. We are accounted as sheep for the slaughter. And then it says, nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. The opposite could be true. We could go through these things but don't conquer because we're not walking in the Spirit. So he's saying, he himself, Paul, is persuaded that death can't do it. Life can't do it. Angels, principalities, powers, present things that come, height. None of these things is able to separate Paul from the love of Elohim, which is in Messiah Yeshua, our Lord. He's persuaded that, right? So he is able, he's saying he's able to walk in the Spirit, and all of these things can't take the love of Yeshua away from them. But that's because, he's talking about walking in the Spirit. But if you ain't walking in the Spirit, then height and death and creature and things in the present or things to come or powers or principalities, all of them things really can separate you from the love of Yeshua. Because you're not using the love of Yeshua, right? You're not using the Ruach HaKodesh. So we can have the Ruach, we can have the Spirit inside of us, and because we're not leaning on the strength of the Ruach HaKodesh, then tribulation and distress and persecution is going to take us away from the love of Messiah. Not because of Yeshua being weak, but because of us not trusting in his power to maintain us. Right? So all I'm saying is that we can't look at Romans chapter 8 and look at this as being this kind of a thing. Well, I don't have to worry about nothing because Yeshua got me. Well, yeah, he do got you, but you have to actually trust in his ability to do it, right? If he's giving you all the tools for the task, but then when the task comes and you don't use his tools for the task, then these things is going to get you. Right? He gave us the shield of faith, but if we don't use that shield of faith to block them fiery darts of Satan, then we're going to get hit with the darts. Right? He gives us the shield, but if we don't use the shield, then it don't do us no good. So we got to understand, we look at these things and all these things that, that there's no condemnation, right? We got life and we got peace, but it's all dependent upon us actually using the keys that Yeshua has given us. Sister Sarah said, hallelujah, wait. I say that right back at you. Okay, does anybody have anything to say about that? Is anybody ready to got any comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. That reminded me of a couple conversations I've had with people who believe that Yahweh actually condemned them with the sin and not the consequences of it. And I was trying to find a way to explain for them to understand what I was saying. That it's the consequences that was, of doing the thing, not that he didn't choose to give you this, simple habit. But there's a couple conversations I've had with several people actually that believe that the sin is what Yahweh condemned them. I'm like, Yahweh doesn't condemn you with a sin. Like, I'm condemned, you know, to the sin. You're condemned once you do the sin and the consequences of it. I was just trying to find a way to explain that. Once again, I didn't do a very good job at it the first few conversations I've had, but that's the point I was trying to make. Like, you're not condemned to this. Like, you chose to do that. Now, the consequences from it, yeah, you're condemned. You're condemned because of this thing. But
well, condemnation and consequences of sin are not the same thing.
Well, yeah, that's what I was trying to explain. But they I guess they thought that the sin, like, you can be condemned to the sin, to do the sin.
Like an example would be like what? Because I'm trying to understand what you're talking about.
Like that, like, I don't know, like a cheating problem, or if you have a lying, like, oh, I can't help it. I'm condemned to be a liar, or I can't help it. I'm condemned to cheat.
Well, okay, so think about, so the problem is that we have to understand, people really have to understand the wretchedness of our human condition apart from the Spirit of Yahweh in us, right? Mm-hmm. So because of the fact that we're in this flesh, like the carnal mind necessarily, when you talk about the carnal mind, it just wants to feed itself, right? It just wants to feed itself. So it's not necessarily, I guess in that regard, it's not that it's wicked. It's kind of neutral, I would say. But because that there's no boundaries, on it, it makes it wicked. Right? Because I could say, well, I love, if I'm a single person, my carnal mind wants me to just love women if I'm a single person, right? So I'm just gonna go out and just, but the part that's messed up about it is that my carnal mind wants me to have these relationships with women, but without boundaries, right? It makes it wicked. You know what I'm saying? So the same thing with, like, that would be the cheating person. The person, your carnal mind wants you to have relationships with a woman, but your carnal mind says, well, one's not enough. I got to have more. And then you get into cheating and lying and all these other things, right? So now you might, there's consequences that come along with those things, which is one thing. But when you talk about condemnation, now condemnation is like condemnation, I guess, could also be a consequence of the sin. But you can't put that on Yahweh, right? That's on you. That's on your carnal mind. That
is that what Inez was talking about before? She was talking about the condemnation.
I don't know.
People trying to put that on Yahweh instead of they're condemning themselves, not Yahweh's condemning them.
I don't know if that's what she was saying before, but I'm talking about as far as what she's talking about now.
Yeah. In
terms of, people need to really understand, and the depravity of man and his necessity to be regenerated, right? Apart from Yahweh and apart from Yeshua and the Ruach HaKodesh, you only want to just feed your flesh, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you do it, yeah. Right? It doesn't.
There are some actual people who think that if you have this sinful habit, that you're condemned. They use the word condemned to it, because this is what I must admit. It's your nature. It's you.
What you mean? Oh, you mean like when you're saying condemned, you mean like they're predestined
they're
to
like
be that.
Hurt. Yeah. And they actually use the word condemned. You know.
Well, I
think
I think that first of all, I think that you're not really using the right terms, the right terminology. Like you saying if say I'm a person and I love to gamble or something, you're saying that there's people that are saying that I've been predestined to gamble and there's nothing that I can do about it.
Yeah. They just lying.
Just like a curse. Like,
they're just lying.
Yeah, but
we know that Yahweh in Romans chapter 9 talks about vessels. It's not vessels for honor and vessels for dishonor. But
it also says that Yahweh is not going. He's not going to cause you to do evil. Yahweh's not going to cause you to do evil. Hold on, what did it say right? It says that in James. He's not going to tempt you with evil. Yahweh's not going to do that. So people need to understand this too. Quit sitting up here blaming Yahweh for something. You blame your own little wicked self. You tell that person you blame yourself. Don't blame Yahweh because he said, hold on, where he said that?
I guess simple as said, yeah.
Hold on, let me find it. James chapter 1 says, let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of Elohim. And Elohim cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempted he any man. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when he lusts, when that lust have conceived, it brings forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, brings forth death. So that person is just up there trying to make excuses for themselves instead of dealing with reality, right? Yahweh don't make you be a gambler or an adulterer or any other of these things. You're enticed by your own lust.
Taken away by your
and when you give in to those things, sin is the thing that is a result of it. So what people people really need to do is be honest with themselves and admit that they're not able to turn on their own and just
get that
right. Just give it to Yeshua and let Yeshua do it, right? Because he will come in now and give you that strength, power, and ability to get over those things. But you can't sit up there and say, well, Yahweh made me do it in the first place. It's
still using an excuse. Yeah. They're using Yahweh as their excuse.
I was made to be like this. There's nothing I could do. I was gonna be like this. That's an excuse.
That's an
excuse. When people want to do something,
they make a way.
They make a way to do it. When you don't want to do it, you make an excuse.
People do it all the time. Blame Yahweh for it.
Yeah, don't blame Yahweh. Blame your carnal
even
mind.
Pharaoh can't blame Yahweh. Everybody can blame
him. No. Whoa.
Is that a permit one?
Yeah, that's mine too. Get that. Okay, so Inez, you tell that person to quit making excuses and let the master come in and take control. That's what you tell that person.
Yeah, that was very good. This was a very interesting chapter.
Yeah.
It was a blessing, definitely a blessing for me today.
Okay. All right, then I guess unless somebody got any more questions, comments? All right, then. Well, we'll say for now, then Shabbat Shalom. Because of my, hold on. Say Shabbat Shalom.